Good evening. This meeting is a meeting of the school board in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered as a public community meeting. Opportunities for public participation will be permitted in accordance with policy 167.3. Each week before we have a board meeting, board members are given the agenda to go over with all of the evidence with it, and we have the time to ask questions, and so we do that prior to the meeting tonight. So I will now call the meeting to order. If everyone could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you everyone for coming to our July meeting of the MSD of Martinsville School Board. There are no public comments tonight, so we will go right to the consent agenda. So I ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
And can I have a second, please?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. We will now go to field trips and professional travel.
Thank you. We have two actually things on the agenda tonight in terms of field trips and professional travel. The first is for Chris Sturgeon to request permission to attend the state director's meeting for academic decathlon. That is in Las Vegas, Nevada. So we'd ask for the board to approve that trip. I guess I'm putting this together. My apologies. And then we have a second one for 3 individuals requesting permission to attend IPLI, which is the Indiana Principal Leadership Institute, which is out of Indiana State University. 3 of our leaders to attend a conference at Indiana State this summer.
I ask for a motion to approve the professional travel.
I move to approve the professional travel as presented.
Second, please.
I second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. We are now ready for reports.
Thank you. And we have a couple of things tonight that I might pair 1 and 2 together a little bit here, but I'll explain here why in a second regarding some construction and some things that we wish to do, and that we will eventually be bringing back to you all for some additional input. We will hope to continue to talk about Title IX regularly as we make some improvements and make some changes to support our students the best that we can. One thing that I want to bring to your attention is that having come onto the district in the last couple of weeks, I would like for us to look at the Title IX issue in a broader perspective and look at it beyond the investigation that occurred and the results of that. And take a deeper look at the district as a whole in terms of how we're equitably supporting kids. And so know that in the coming months, that's something that Mr. Buckler and I will continue to work on and chip away at, just to make sure that we're not just situationally fixing something, that we're truly looking across the board at how we're supporting kids. So as just some additional information, I met with Dr. Sears, our principal at Martinsville High School, and Kip Staggs, our athletic director, last week. And we talked a little bit about where we are and some of the items that Kip presented at the last, Mr. Staggs presented at the last meeting. We, I think, have some additional things that we're going to try to do moving forward to beef that up even a little bit more. One of those things is bringing in a speaker, or I shouldn't say speaker, but an expert on equity. And so that will be something that we have that person work with our coaches and our athletic staff a little bit on further assisting us with understanding equity and this Title IX issue that we've identified. And so we hope that bringing in somebody who really, this is their work, can really help us make sure that we're dotting all of our I's and crossing our T's, and at the end of the day, really supporting our kids the way that we want to make sure we're supporting them. So that's a little bit of change, just something that we're going to add to some of the things that Mr. Staggs mentioned at the last meeting. Some questions about that? About this point? Okay.
Good, thank you.
And the second part, which relates to this, the Hammonds program location update, I just want to give you a quick update that we had anticipated Hammonds moving to the high school campus at the start of the school year. Because of construction delays and just so many projects going on, it's not going to be possible. So we're pushing that back. How that relates to the Title IX piece, as a result of the Title IX piece, we reconstructing some locker room space, particularly for the softball locker rooms. And I know a couple of you have interest in that and have been at meetings that I've been at as well, and have seen some of the plans. But there was an original plan for a space to be altered a little bit for the women's softball locker room. And we're making a little bit of a switch in that particular building. We're still making that change to that locker room, except we're sort of shifting it in the same building in a different direction. What that will allow us to do is make better use of some space for our Hammonds program, so that we're purpose building a space for that program. It also will allow us to add a concession stand that we're super excited about. I think the high school is pretty excited about. Looking for a head nod back there. But we think that will help our athletics program too, giving an additional concession stand for football games that is more geared toward the visitor side of the field, as well as offering a concession stand that would open out to the other side of the building, which would be the softball area. So that would then give the girls area a concession stand of their own. So as we're thinking about redesigning some of these things and twisting some things, we decided at the last minute it made more sense to kind of look at how all these things relate and not just do piecemeal projects. And so that's how that Title IX and the Hammonds piece relate. But what we know is that it's going to take us a little bit more time because we haven't started that construction. And so we anticipate this being sort of projected out over a couple of different time periods. So the hope is that all of it's done pretty close to spring, in time for the spring season in terms of everything being done. But our anticipated date for a storage area for the vocational program to be done would be fall break. That's our hope. It's not a promise, that's a hope. If we can get everything lined out and everything permitted. Then the second deadline would be moving Hammonds to the Martinsville High School campus in that same area by winter break, and then as soon as possible thereafter getting the concession stand done. So we think looking at all of those pieces together makes more sense and doing a little bit of a different approach. And I really appreciate our Director of Facilities, Sam Arns, for all his hard work redesigning these plans at the last minute, because he really put a lot of thought into, with a lot of great input from the high school, from teachers, the committees that were involved, both I think some folks that were even on the Fieldhouse Committee, as well as our athletic director, and certainly the folks on the softball committee. So I feel really good about, we've gotten a lot of input. So I appreciate everyone's time on that. So that's coming. We will keep you updated on those changes as they happen.
Thank you.
Number 3. The third report is an I-69 easement report. At the last meeting, I asked for approval for you all to allow us to share a piece of land that's on Martinsville School property with Martinsville, the city, so that they could move some utilities. So in essence, we are giving them an easement to relocate the utilities for I-69. They have now worked that out with the state of Indiana, but they no longer need that space. And so in essence, what you voted for last month, we didn't really need you to vote for it. We didn't know that at the time, but we just recently got notification that they no longer want that easement. So there's nothing that we need to do. I just wanted to make you aware that that land will continue to be part of the MSD of Martinsville.
Any discussion? Okay, thank you.
At this point, Brian, Mr. Freeze.
Behind you, Cam.
Mr. Freeze is going to come up. He has some things he wants to talk about in terms of a new agreement, or an agreement that we've been working on regarding fiber and some other technology pieces. Brian?
Evening, thank you. Good evening, MSD of Martinsville, School Board, Dr. Arthur, and Mr. Buckler. Tonight I want to discuss a project of mine that began about 2 years ago. I promise to keep my synopsis as brief as possible. Over 10 years ago, the school district installed over 6 miles of fiber to provide internet to the school district. Most of this was done out of pocket or through grants. E-rate was not an option at the time. During that time, the city, the county, both added their own fiber that in certain parts of the town connected to ours. Shortly after, the city, county, and school district drafted an interlocal agreement, agreeing to share all of the fiber in 3 equal parts, and agreeing to share the price of maintenance and updates equally as well. There were future plans in place that were meant to benefit all parties, but unfortunately, none of those plans came to fruition. And over the years, much of the interlocal was either forgotten or not enforced. When I stepped in, it was important to me that we were utilizing our resources appropriately and fairly. So I began working with the city and county to evaluate and reprioritize the current interlocal to make sure that it was, 1, up to Indiana State Code, 2, fair for all parties involved, provide proper checks and balance and documentation, and most importantly, allow for growth, especially since the district at the time was considering e-learning days. So after several meetings, hours of discussion, multiple drafts, looked at and revised by all 3 groups' attorneys, we came to an agreement that I want to present to you this evening. So you may be wondering, what does this interlocal provide that the other one did not, and how does having a contract such as this, a unique interlocal agreement between the city and the county, benefit us? And you know, what is it really doing? So first and foremost, the new contract is now up to state code and state law. It was very important to ensure we were following code and avoiding any possible loopholes with that. Instead of sharing the fiber and all costs associated, the new interlocal will allow for complete ownership of the lines each entity personally installed. And we went back in records 10 plus years to make sure that we were accurately providing that information as we met over the last 2 years. By separating ownership, each entity can now appropriately afford the costs that come with owning fiber, which include but are not limited to annual inspections, updates, repairs, locates, and so on. Speaking of locates, which essentially a locate is anyone trying to do construction has to provide information, spray painted and flagged on the ground of where sewer, gas, water, and fiber are all located and electric. And so we actually now no longer outsource those, which are about $300 to locate. We do that work in-house, which has saved us a substantial amount of money, especially with the I-69 project. We have days where we have 20 plus locates a day, so that adds up real quick. Now that each entity has full ownership of their fiber, they have additional strands that are not in use. Our original install provided 144 strands of fiber that we split into thirds. But now we have access to all 144 of those strands. We use about 48 to each building. So that leaves a surplus of almost 100 strands that we're not currently utilizing, which is great because that puts potential to be leased to other internet service providers in the city, extending those providers' reach to the city and allowing for more growth. Also, please note that each party stated in the interlocal gets priority to use/lease the ducting, which is what houses the fiber, for each other entity over an internet service provider. So we want to prioritize growth within the city, through the city, and the county before we're looking at another third party coming in potentially using that fiber. City and county and school district within each other have priority first. With all this in mind, how do we know what is what and who is keeping track of this information? An issue that we had that needed addressed in the previous interlocal. As stated in the new interlocal, we'll be creating a fiber board consisting of representatives from each entity that will meet annually to make sure each partner is in compliance and can then approve additional growth based on criteria the committee will be creating. The criteria will have a heavy focus on how new projects will help to grow the community. So the idea is that if a third party, so Martinsville is a pretty interesting place. We are kind of the crossroads for a lot of internet service providers. We have over 8 different providers that go through our city. And so we want to make sure that if they're wanting to extend through the almost 7 miles of fiber that the school district owns, they're doing it to benefit and grow our community. And so that's actually going to be part of the criteria that we'll be developing is we want those providers to answer that question. How are you going to bring growth to this community? What is the positive of you become part of this joint adventure. There's currently a map that outlines each party's ownership. Any and all changes, additions, and potential leases will require documentation, approval, and updates. That way all parties are aware of where fiber is located, who is using what strands, and for how long. We also plan to put time limits on those leases and have full contracts in place. We have actually already started growth. The school district, the city, and REMC have partnered to run an additional mile of fiber, which was approved a few months ago, out past transportation. This is one of, I hope, many joint ventures with different parts of the community to bring increased internet coverage to our city. Any questions?
And all parties are okay with this? Like, REMC and the city
Yes.
are going to be okay with this new contract?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So with that, we were able to, part of the cost saving venture with REMC and the city in that partnership is we were able to split the cost into thirds, which was a big benefit to all of us. And then we also incorporated space within that ducting intentionally for growth. And with the county and the city, yes, that is the big point, is to make sure that that's a priority.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item, Dr. Nick Sears. Dr. Sears will be talking to us about graduation ceremony dates and some additional thoughts about where we might head with that.
So you'll be getting a packet. The opening page is the question, the open-ended question that I worked with Dr. Arthur and Mr. Buckler. We developed this open-ended question to seek input from our families of our graduates, the class of 2020. I'll give you a second if you'd like to read that open-ended question. Essentially, for those of you with us, an open-ended question and look at moving the graduation date that's currently advertised 1 week after students finish, May 30th, and moving it back closer to when they finish, to Saturday, May 23rd, which more closely resembles our recent history. And I mentioned the recent history. I only have 5 of those years, so some of you in the room that have been with the district much longer would know if we've ever had that practice of separating it out more than a week away from the student's last day. I bring this forward for discussion and the results of the survey because parents and community members brought it forward to me, and the results of the survey, there were 137 results or responses out of roughly 350 seniors. It's about a 40% return for the survey, which would be pretty good. And about 98% of the responses that you have in front of you indicate a desire to switch this to the 23rd. Now that is the Memorial Day weekend, and as I've stated to people before, when it's your kid's graduation, there's just some weekends that you're going to have to interrupt. I do realize it's a holiday weekend. For teachers, which I think we should take into consideration strongly, highly, of course, what is the turnaround for our teachers? Those that have seniors, of course, particularly in our early grad juniors. This is would be a similar turnaround. And as I was speaking to Mr. Lund in the back and Mrs. Lund, it's not a surprise. You don't just wake up the last day of school and realize that you had a senior in trouble with grades and credits and in jeopardy of graduating. So we think there's vision, we think there's time. We didn't want to propose this change and create undue stress and worries. If we could consider the change, in the coming days or weeks, get this published, we could provide a good service and proper planning to the families. So do you have questions on the question and on the responses from those 137?
I do have a couple. I do have a senior graduating, but anyway, in your question, as I was reading it, it's not stated that the date we're changing it to is Memorial Day. I know the majority of your responses, but as I was glancing, I just happened to see one that said, I believe this is on Memorial Day weekend. It could cause conflict with our family due to scheduling. So this is the question. So Memorial Day was not indicated that that's when we'd be changing the date to?
No.
And then, was there any consideration to a Friday night?
Really, the answer to both. Okay, so we'll start. No to the Friday night. I've had it at other schools. But here, I think we did stick with that tradition that it had been Saturday. So rather than radical, let's just switch it back a week and switch days. I think the consideration was just to keep the same day, which is a Saturday. I do like Friday, but after publishing the question once, I thought we would stick. The second thing about Memorial Day is interesting. Believe in the 5-year history that I've had with us, we have had it on Memorial Day weekend before. I remember recognizing, servicemen and women at the ceremony. There's a lot of great events that happen on Memorial Day weekend. So graduation could be one of them. So, any other questions?
I'm in agreement with Ms. Ball, the concern over the Memorial Day weekend, because, I'm on the first page of comments here, and I see that 23rd makes more, for a reply, 23rd makes more sense so you don't interfere with holiday weekend. I mean, that again tells me that it wasn't specified that was still Memorial Day weekend.
Sure. When we do a survey, one caution I'd make is there were 137 wide open responses. We're going to get a naysayer or someone that will interpret the question or not know the holiday. We're going to get some of those. But for my presentation or the consideration is the strong 98% of these responses. Maybe input from Sam Arns, whose daughter graduated recently, a year or two back, I'm not sure, from Center Grove. They experienced the week gap, and his sentiments were not positive on that week gap. So again, I'm just bringing forward, feedback and input from others.
Dr. Susan, I would also agree with you concerning the military. As long as I'm on the board, for 1/5 of an opinion, we will continue to support the military as we have it and recognize them at our graduation. But I feel like that can be done anyway.
Sure.
It's my personal.
Sure.
So how much did you involve the union and talk with Shannon and everyone? Okay.
Yeah, so when the questions came forward, and it seemed to be, growing,
Right.
I reached out to Shannon and asked if she recalled what the discussion was around why would the date be a week later. And if we look at the history, I don't know that we could find a week later. Unfortunately, I wasn't a part of the discussion as the high school principal to help decide or input of the graduation date. And there was some conversation about would the teachers have the turnaround, and I think there was some conversation about Memorial Day, but I think it was quite limited to those two pieces.
So you feel there'll be enough turnaround time? Good.
Sure, of course.
Is it okay to answer one?
Of course.
So when looking at it, we have the funding day of the week here, which adds another day. And so we do have teachers coming back for a professional day after graduation. I know we talked about that as being a potential issue in discussion last year. I pulled our discussion notes, and the things I documented were not really around the graduation date. And so I'm really pulling from memory more than paperwork. So my kind of thought was if we could do something, if we were to move this, if we had some kind of modified finals situation for seniors that allotted a bit more time, that if we consider that, we could maybe get around it.
I think we need to look at the teacher side too, so that was my concern. Yeah, okay.
One other note of the 5 years, we had this same thing happen about 3 years ago when the board and Dr. Moore realized that it was a week later, and I asked for a change, and it was granted back then. So I'm not sure how the week kind of keeps coming out. Yes, Steve?
No, go ahead. Finish.
But I would just share again, I feel like when we wrap up a school year, we really want to put a bow on it, wrap it up, and let people get off. We have students leaving for the military. We have students going into the workforce. We have students taking early college. I think we need to wrap up high school because our planning, we're heavy deep into planning for the next year, even before we wrap up the current year. So I would love back to that consideration.
How quickly do you need an answer on this?
I'm going to defer to Dr. Arthur.
Our plan was, because I'm not confident that we've done all the things that we need to do with the association. So out of all fairness, that's why I brought this as a report this month. And so if we are going to recommend that you guys consider a change to the date, bring it to the next meeting.
My thought, again, my personal opinion, was that the board take this under consideration, review the pros and cons, and then, maybe come back with an answer later.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're ready for other business.
Okay, next item. We would like to request permission to purchase 2 lift buses for approximately $234,000 and 2 72 passenger units for approximately $199,000. These are, you have actually previously approved this amount of money for these 4 purchases. It was a $400,000 budget item, but now that we're actually at the point of purchasing them and actually working with the company to purchase these 4 buses, we would like to ask for your permission to make that purchase.
I ask for a motion to approve the purchase of buses as requested.
I move that we approve the purchasing of the buses.
Second, please.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you. The next item, we would like to request permission to advertise the 2020 budget. This is a standard request each year at this time. We are obligated to advertise the budget and advertise what we intend to do with the taxpayer dollars for the next school year. So we would like your permission to do that.
I ask for a motion to approve advertising the 2020 budget as requested.
I move to approve the advertising of the budget.
I second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries.
This next item, thank you, by the way. This next item is in regard to Brian Tree's conversation he just had with us, or his presentation regarding fiber. It's a request to approve the interlocal agreement between the City of Martinsville, the county, and the MSD of Martinsville.
I ask for a motion to approve the agreement as requested.
I move to approve the agreement.
Second, please.
I second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you. And the final item for, in terms of requesting for your approval, we would ask that you grant authorization to sign agreements for alternative services in private residential school placements. What this allows us to do is be reimbursed more quickly for special education placements that are outside of our school district that we're having to pay for. The Department of Education reimburses us for a large portion of that, and those are excessive. And so this allows us to not have to wait months on end to get those money, or those dollars reimbursed.
I ask for a motion to approve the authorization to sign agreements as requested.
I move that we approve the authorization.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries.
One additional comment, I just want to say thank you to everyone, particularly in the community, for all the kind words and all the nice handshakes and all the hospitality over the last couple of weeks. It's been overwhelming, and I appreciate that as the new superintendent. So thank you. The picnic at the park yesterday was a hit. It was really fun to meet all the families and teachers, so I appreciate that. And additionally, I would like to introduce Mr. Craig Buckler. Craig, we talked about him a little bit at the last meeting, but Craig comes to us from Beech Grove, and he is our new assistant superintendent. So he's, I think, felt the same hospitality. Is that fair to say?
Very fair, absolutely.
Welcome, Craig. Appreciate being here.
Thank you. Well, we welcome both of you. We're excited for the new school year, and this is hard to believe, but this is our last board meeting before school starts. So it's kind of really gone way too fast. And this is usually a time where we do recognitions, but in the summer there's not a lot of things going on. So we're going to recognize some things, but then give you some reminders of things upcoming that we thought you'd be interested in. I do want to say our fellow board member, Dave Reinhardt, is recovering from surgery. So that's why he's not here tonight, and we want to send him our best wishes for speedy recovery. And the MSD will be having their booth at the tent at the fair again this year. You'll be able to pick up several items about the upcoming school year, so be sure and stop by, say hello, get your eat, and meet and greet and talk to everybody.
Lift up, what's called a backpack attack. will be held at Hoosier Harvest Church on Saturday, August 3rd, from 10 o'clock in the morning until noon. They will have backpacks or school supplies for students for the coming year.
I want to say thank you to Sam Marks, his staff, and the staff in each building, and the MSD for their hard work in getting everything ready for the new school year. Also, thanks to Sam for a great job in overseeing our in-house projects.
We want to wish everyone a great start for the 2019-2020 school year, which is fast approaching, way too fast. The offices at the elementary buildings will be opening Monday, July 22nd, and the high school, Bell, and Wooden are now open. And I'm trying to work on a snow day for the first day, so, without success.
But please join us at the fair. It's a great time to see everybody and talk with our superintendent and assistant superintendent, and principals will be there, and it's a great time to have fair food as well as come and visit everybody that'll be there. I ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second, please.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Our next meeting will be August 15th at 6:30 p.m. at the Central Education Office. Here, right here. Thank you for coming.